Hello and welcome to this special interview where I, Kit Winder, am joined by James Allen to talk about the American election and what it means for the energy markets. And James is our energy expert here at Southbank Investment Research, so I thought it was the perfect person to get along and unpack what it all means, because obviously everyone is looking at the fallout in financial markets, thinking about what it means for the next 4 years. But for energy markets specifically, he is obviously a very divisive character, so there's a lot to talk about. And the first question really is, there was quite a lot of fallout in financial markets on the day and in the days after. What have the main sort of themes been there, and are they fair in your opinion?
Yeah, it's been quite a confused reaction, certainly across energy. It's not obviously a one-size-fits-all reaction. We've seen, obviously, oil and gas stocks tick up, some quite markedly on the day, on the Wednesday, when the election result was announced on Wednesday morning. And certainly Wednesday session in the US, we saw a big reaction for certain oil and gas stocks. Clean tech had a decline, probably not totally unexpected. Some of the rhetoric coming from Trump ahead of the election was quite anti renewables, anti-green energy. So it was relatively muted, actually. It wasn't quite as bad as potentially it could have been, and actually on Thursday things stabilised a lot, really. So I had to see what happened in terms of the markets, I think, over the short term while everything gets worked out. But certainly the divergence, oil and gas up, clean tech down a bit. And that's really, Donald Trump, obviously ahead of the election, was very much pro-fossil fuels, drill, baby, drill. He's all about sort of lowest cost of energy. He certainly likes fossil fuels, likes oil, wants to promote homegrown oil and gas. Obviously, he's very happy about LNG exports as well from the US as well, and anti-wind. I mean, wind is probably we saw a big decline in some wind stocks both in Europe and actually in the US as well. So yeah, that'll be the overarching viewpoint, really, in terms of the
Yes,
markets.
wind. I remember clips of speeches of him going on about the birds. He's very casual about the birds.
And
That's
whales.
his main concern. So we've talked about sectors there a little bit, but maybe going into things like nuclear. I mean, we had a lot of nuclear news in the last month, and it's been a big theme over the last sort of 12 to 18 months for us at Southbank. What does it mean for that segment, maybe?
It's the funny. The nuclear one's a funny one. Undecided, actually. And the first Trump administration said did a lot of nice things about nuclear, for nuclear. They passed some sort of quite supportive policies for the sort of advanced nuclear industry. They did some nice things for small modular reactors. The questions about this administration depends on actually who you talk to. He said some kind things and some not so good things about nuclear. But obviously in his administration, we'll get people like RFK. He's been very anti-nuclear in the past. I think one of his big crowning achievements was to help shut down a large nuclear reactor in New York State before. Alternatively, we have JD Vance, the vice president-elect JD Vance, and he said that shutting down nuclear reactors is one of the dumbest things that you can do. So he seems quite pro-nuclear. So I think we have to see a wait-and-see approach, really, in terms of the nuclear industry, in terms of nuclear reaction, in terms of Trump. My instinct is that he'll be quite positive. I think he's talked about, lots of, AI, for example. He's talked about, we need lots of new power plants for AI. Now, that would suggest that he's going to be quite positive for nuclear. Nuclear has been the big story about nuclear. Actually, has been to help fuel some of this AI demands. So you'd think that nuclear could be a potential net beneficiary of a Trump administration. But I guess the jury's out, really. I mean, there's been no sort of detail. He didn't talk about it that much in advance.
Okay, and you mentioned there a couple of other key figures in the administration. But I mean, we've been following, obviously, Jennifer Granholm, who's been Biden's energy secretary for the last few years. Are there other members or other key people that we're going to have to get to know and look at in his organization? And do we know anything about what they're going to be doing?
No, it's jury's out again. It's the big question mark: who will be leading the Department of Energy? Right, so we don't know. There's potential people that he could choose that are incredibly pro fossil fuels, and there are others that are a bit more skeptical about fossil fuels. Obviously, the Republicans per se tend to be more sort of positive for fossil fuels than Democrats, but there's a big scale there who he could potentially choose from. So we don't quite know. That will be a key decision. He's given no real indication that who might be head of the DOE. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see there as well. It depends who he chooses. I mean, what we also have to remember in terms of clean energy, I don't know if you're going to come on to talk about this. Lots of the advances in clean tech industries in the US under the Biden administration have actually been in red states. They've been in Republican states. We've seen lots of incoming investments into Republican states, taking advantage of Biden's sort of signature climate policy, the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of the benefits of that have been seen in Republican states. So that's going to be quite hard to unwind, I think, in those states. So we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, a lot's going to be determined by who is going to be the head of the Department of Energy. Don't quite know yet. And there's a scale. There could be more skeptical for fossil fuels, and some might take a bit of a hands-off approach really in terms of clean energy and not be so against it as sort of Trump has intimated.
Yeah, and it is the relationship, as you say, between politics and the energy transition. There's so much narrative, but the reality is often quite different. I saw an oil and gas CEO came out and sort of said, "Thank God we're saved." I mean, we were on the brink in the American oil and gas industry. But there are sort of stats around how fossil fuels have thrived under Biden. As you say, with the European crisis, gas has exploded in terms of exports. It doesn't feel like it's an industry in crisis necessarily. Whereas under Trump 4 years ago, or the last time he was elected, there were also renewables records getting broken as well. So yeah, what happened last time under Trump's reign? Did it match up to the rhetoric? And do you think that's something that could play out again?
No, exactly right. Exactly right. So, I mean, markets prevail, right? So under the first Trump administration, we saw a big clean tech boom that started really under Trump. So 2019, beginning bits of 2020 under Trump, clean tech stocks soared. Previously to his first administration, he also talked about how he was going to promote coal. He was going to be the savior of the US coal industry. What we saw under the first Trump administration was, US coal production plummets. That's the reality. The markets prevail. And likewise here, we can see very similar actions here. So he's been very positive on sort of oil and gas, but if the global market, the US market's still tied to the global market, and if those prices aren't there to incentivize production of US fossil fuels, then it won't get drilled fundamentally. So obviously he can do lots in terms of permitting. He can try and stimulate some, help the production process in that sense. But actually, what actually gets drilled at the margins will be determined by the market price, the global market price. So, that's what we'll see. I'm sure he'll be very positive in terms of oil and gas leases. Biden will start to roll some of those back or be much more restrictive. And I suspect Trump will have a much more positive attitude to fossil fuel oil and gas production leases, and maybe potentially anti similar leases in the offshore wind industry as well. But essentially, at the margin, it'll come down to the market price of these fuels and
yeah, that's been one of the sort of common conceptions, is that this energy transition needs politics as a key driver. But what you've always said is that it's the economics driving it. It's the price of these alternative fuels, and the market will drive these things. And China has taken that two ways, really. It has just gone with the pricing mechanisms, and it's gone with what the market is saying the future will be, which is solar, wind, batteries, electric vehicles. But it has used its political weight to really, really dominate those industries. And that is, one of the things that is concerning America. I don't know if Trump is so worried that they care so much about energy transition industries, but his China stance is obviously quite aggressive. It's focused on tariffs. Is that going to restrict China's dominance of these industries? Is it going to help the rest of the world catch up?
It could certainly, push up the costs of developing renewables in the US, slowing down their rollout if these high tariffs come in. Likewise, you could also see, China could respond by a big economic stimulus program, which could really rocket sort of their side of the equation as well. So Chinese clean energy stocks could actually have a positive reaction now as well. So we'll have to see what happens. But certainly import tariffs, that could really help slow down the US rollout of renewables. And lots of this stuff, is manufactured in China. We'll certainly have to see. But yeah, the other thing is Trump's rhetoric about tariffs, is that really just a negotiation tactic as well? Will we actually see these high tariffs actually come in? It's going to be an interesting few weeks, certainly. I mean, everyone's waiting to see actually what Trump he said he will do certain things on day one. We'll have to, in the next few weeks, a lot more will become clear. But certainly, I think certainly in terms of clean energy, the rollout of clean energy could be slowed, I guess, by Trump. But the momentum behind it really is unstoppable. We'll get there in the end for sure. The US has made amazing strides over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of developing some of this technology. We've seen huge rollouts in solar energy, in particular in the US. And I think that really is an unstoppable sort of mega trend. Whether new solar plants coming in, we'll have to watch there. But that could potentially be slowed down. But I think the US on the ground solar, it's only going to go higher. Its growth might slow a little bit. But yeah, we'll just have to see.
Okay, so just one final question, if I may, James. I mean, one of the key things in tackling climate change is obviously global coordination, and we've seen that through various very successful COP meetings, some more than others, it must be said. But one of the most damaging things that was associated with the last Trump term was really that pulling back of America from these global coordinated attempts to tackle climate change. Is that something you see as a big risk again this time round?
Undoubtedly, yeah, that's been big risk for sure. Global climate policy has taken a step back. The US is now in danger of not being at the table going forward, or having a less prominent role going forward. I think other countries also will now need to step up as well. For certain, that whole movement is really uncertain right now, and we'll have to wait and see what other countries' reaction to that will be. But the best case scenario, that Trump's bite is not as bad as his bark, I would say. But certainly, the headline figure would be global climate policy took a step back for sure with Trump's win, sadly.
Okay, well, so overall, it sounds like it's a pretty mixed picture. The direction remains clear, but the speed and the coordinated response that America will have over the next few years is more in doubt than it was, which is obviously distressing from a global climate perspective. But James, thanks so much for coming and speaking to us today. And yeah, we'll be back in touch with the next video soon.
My pleasure.